On this episode of Death by Bunjie, we are going to look at a whole bunch of new scopes for 2025. It is snowing in the 60-yard backyard, and that is a perfect time to sit in here and look at these scopes. We're going to start by looking back at one of my favorite crossbow companies, Excalibur. Believe it or not, I have a soft spot in my heart, always will, for Excalibur, the original Bunjie, hanging on the wall behind me. One of the scopes I've used over the years that I really liked was the Twilight DLX. It worked perfectly on that crossbow for years. It has 60-yard reticles, works really good. You know, they're not all crammed together like some of those speed ring scopes get. And it worked really good for my old eyes. I was able to see stuff in there. It was illuminated, had good low light. This is sort of a throwback to that scope. Now that scope went out of production. They started making the TACT zone scope, which was very similar in nature. But I've gotten word here through Wyvern Creations, the Excalibur TACT Hunter scope, an updated version of that scope. And here's what's updated about it. For you guys that are still into vintage scopes, you know, the old school scopes with a speed ring, all that good stuff. This is a good update in my opinion to still offer a scope like this for people to stay within 60 yards. That's totally, I got a 60-yard backyard, so 60 yards is plenty, right? Not my favorite kind of scope in this day and age. I'm kind of spoiled because I've been using the Burris Oracle X, but nonetheless, for $189 here on Wyvern Creations, we see the TACT Hunter scope, and they do sell this separately. You can also buy it as part of one of the crossbow packages, I am told. So if you look here, this is an Excalibur scope. What's interesting about this scope, like I said, we can look here on Midway USA, and if we click on here, we'll get a look at those reticles. 60-yard reticles, we've got green illumination, we've got red illumination. What more do you want? I'll tell you what more we want, right? What more we want is range-finding scopes. When I first met Bunjie back in 2010 and bought a rangefinder shortly thereafter, I remember wondering why someone didn't combine the two pieces of equipment, a scope and a rangefinder, into a single device. I am happy to see that now, a dozen years later, that technology exists. That's right. I've been using a Burris Oracle X here on Death by Bunjie now for going on 3 seasons, I think. There are a variety of new offerings out there that I want to talk about for these range-finding scopes. Now, the speed ring scope, the problem with that is 25 is not the same as 20, and it's not the same as 30. It's in between. 27 is not the same as 25 or 30. You get to these little differences in accuracy, and I don't like that. The range-finding scope, like the Burris Oracle X, I use a Bluetooth remote, I click on it, I get an instant dot right on the screen, I use that dot to aim, and it is precise, right on the money, and it has worked flawlessly for me time and time again. The Burris Oracle X is like the first one to come out. It was the latest and greatest. I struggled at the beginning. I had a couple of them that didn't work, I had to send them back. One of them I bought refurbished, and it just didn't work. When they worked perfectly, and for the last season and a half, they have worked flawlessly for me. I haven't had to send them back or anything. Just change the batteries, we're all good. Just like this TACT Hunter scope and the speed ring scopes, you've got a little battery in there to illuminate those reticles for you, right? If you leave it on like I always did, you know, you forget to turn it off at the end of the hunter, battery goes dead. The next time you go out, you still have fixed reticles where you can hunt even without the illumination. The Burris Oracle X is the same thing. The Burris Oracle X has etched reticles built in, and even if the range-finding feature dies on you because the remote battery dies or because the scope battery dies, that fixed reticle will still work. Now, it doesn't line up exactly to 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 or whatever. You've got to know those yardages ahead of time, but your 20 is definitely on. At least you can hunt with that information, right? And if you're taking 20-yard shots, you probably got no problem. Contrast that with the Garmin version of those range-finding scopes that came out around the same time. That is digital in its entirety, and when the battery goes dead, I am told you have no reticles whatsoever. So there's different sort of features on these scopes. A few people have asked me about the ZULUS version of this scope, and if we look here, we have that. The ZDH312 stands for ZULUS HD 3 to 12, right? That's what this model number stands for. Don't know why we still have that. Just call it this. Digital night vision scope. The advantage of this scope, there's a few advantages: weight, cost, Plus, it records, and it is a thermal imaging nighttime scope as well. I actually had plans to buy one of these and put it on my third SWAT X1, the one that doesn't have a Burris Oracle X on it at this time. And I thought, oh, it'd be great for predator hunting. Got to check the regulations wherever you are, because the regulations on a night vision scope, there's regulations on them. Let's just put it that way, right? You got to make sure that whatever you're using is legal. And some of this stuff, the range-finding scopes in general, are not legal everywhere. Hopefully that changes. Night vision scopes as well. The game commissions are a little skeptical of that, right? They are legal for the predator hunting, and if I can go out there and hunt coyotes with that at night, I thought it would be interesting to do. The downside of this scope is it does not have that little Bluetooth remote or even a wired remote like the Garmin version does. You know, it's just a rangefinder and a scope is all it is. So, like, it's the same as doing this and then this. Once you've ranged it, you might get a reticle to shoot with, but it's not as though you can control that if the animal is moving. For us as crossbow hunters, we kind of need that reticle on the fly. We need that reticle immediately, right? And as that deer's moving around or whatever, I'm clicking on that, playing with that remote and rearranging time and time again as that deer is moving throughout a food plot or what have you. And as that deer is moving, I'm ranging it and getting ready. I'm always ready. I've always got a dot on my scope ready to aim and pull the trigger. With this scope, you're going to range ahead of time and then be ready to shoot. This is actually a rifle scope. It is not a crossbow scope. And I think that's one reason why the ranging can be done separately. It doesn't matter if you got to lift your hand up and range and then go back to shoot with a rifle, because you're probably 100 yards or more away from the animal. This one does have that zoom 3 to 12, but for us as crossbow hunters, we're a little bit closer to the animal, and all that movement with your hand going back and forth, not the best idea. So that scope, I have less interest in that until it becomes more of a crossbow-oriented scope, and I really don't think I'm going to go forward with that and looking at those. I'm also not interested in this sort of scope. The speed ring scope for me is no longer of interest. I don't plan on going back. Once you've used a range finding scope, it's legal wherever I want to hunt, it looks like, and I'm just going to keep using it. And, you know, I've hunted out of the country even with it, and I'm not going to go back to a speed ring scope. It's that simple. But isn't it interesting how we're seeing advances in technology? What have I been talking about here? In January, we look at new crossbow equipment. We've been looking at new crossbows, and I've talked about smaller, faster, lighter, denser, and cheaper. We are looking at the market increasing the competition for these kinds of scopes. We now see a ZULUS scope with night vision, recording ability. We see this one, the Buck Ops X Factor range-finding crossbow scope, $599. The Burris Oracle X starting at like $999. Now you can get it for like $799, I think. The beauty of the Burris Oracle X is you can buy a used one for $400, $500 maybe, and then if it doesn't work, you send it back to the company, they give you a new one. Period. Forever. It is a no questions asked warranty. If you drop it off the top of your house, smash it, don't do that. But if it's broken, send it back to them. They will replace it and send it back. They'll either fix it or send you a new one. And typically, I think what they do is they send you another one, a refurbished one, to replace it with. And then they just fix that one up and get it ready. So that's what they're doing. They're just recycling them. I've sent a couple back already, and within 2 weeks, I've gotten them back. I've gotten one back where it works perfectly and I'm still using them. So you can't beat it. But this one for $599, we see the benefit of a market working on this. And that's the smaller, faster, lighter, denser, and cheaper. Yes, the cheaper part, we're seeing that now. And people have been saying, oh, these scopes are too expensive. But it isn't as though the first one that comes out, you got to have that one. What that means is all these other manufacturers are going to be pushing in this direction and creating competition. We're seeing, boom, a perfectly legitimate crossbow scope. If we look at this one, it is a crossbow scope. It's made for crossbows. Easily acquire ranges quick and accurately with all the Buck Ops X Factor crossbow range finding scope with the Bucks. I don't know what that means, but a little typo there. With the Buck Ops, I don't know, just a typo. The X Factor features a built-in angle compensating laser rangefinder that is activated instantly with a simple press of a button. Identical to the Burris Oracle X, what we are seeing is you push a button, boom, you've got your target acquired. It compensates for the angle. If you're looking down like this and you range versus uphill versus on the level, that dot is going to give you precision accuracy. Just like your rangefinder, but you don't have to worry about the reticles. And we don't have that issue with those like we do with those speed ring scopes, aiming in between different reticles. Hold the rage button. The rage button. Hold the range button, I'm betting, to enable active scan mode to range moving targets. Perfection, that's beautiful. That is what we're looking for in a range-finding scope. Combining all the top technologies with easy-to-use dependability with the X Factor speed dial, feet per second, precision reticle, you can fine-tune your optic to match the arrow speed of your crossbow with the simple turn of a dial. So I think what we're seeing here, their method for setup, if I have a criticism of the Burris Oracle X, it's a little involved to get it set up. But once it's set up, it's beautiful, right? This one seems to speed that up a little bit. With the speed dial precision reticle, you can fine tune your optic. So what we're doing is very similar to a speed ring scope. If we look at it, maybe we can get a picture of that. We have the range button on top, I'm betting. But then we have a dial here, see, a speed ring, where we can set the speed of the crossbow. Now that's going to be the true speed. Heavier arrow is going to slow it down a little bit. A heavier broadhead going to slow it down a little bit. But we're going to compensate, get that in the ballpark with that speed ring. Then shoot it a few times in the backyard and make sure it stays dead on. What we are also seeing with these things, I can tell you right off the bat, it looks to be smaller as well. We talk about smaller, faster, lighter, denser, and cheaper. And smaller is another thing that we measure technology by, right? Things tend to get smaller over time as new versions of a product come out, as they are refined, as technology advances. And that's what we're seeing here, a smaller version of it. I don't know if it's lighter or not. We'll look at that. But here's your reticle. And you know it's a good one because look at the size of that buck. We got a nice big buck here. This looks very similar to a rangefinder optic and less like a scope optic in some ways because we have a lot of data on here. We got, looks like a battery all charged up, tells us about the battery. All of this stuff is set up in the Burris Oracle X as well, but in a different place. It's sort of up at the top of the scope. We do have our reticles here, and we can switch from green to red. But what I am seeing here, the problem is, if I am not mistaken, let's do the green one. Can we blow that up a little bit more? It's telling me 28.4 yards to this buck, and then I have to use reticles like the speed ring scopes. Aww. No, that's not my preference. That is a range-finding scope for sure. It gives us the range. It finds the range, but it doesn't give us a precise dot for the purposes of aiming. Now, this is still better than holding up the rangefinder and ranging it, putting that down and trying not to drop it out of the tree stand, then picking your crossbow up and all that. Still better than that, but we are still using the separate reticles. I am not a fan of that. That's really not going to do it for me. And this is another angle we have. That really is not going to be the ideal setup for me. Not enough to get me to switch from the Burris Oracle X to this product. Really, this is a speed ring scope with a built-in rangefinder. It's not a range-finding scope like the Burris Oracle X. All right, so that is your introduction to a range-finding scope for $599, but it's not giving us all the features that we would have. So it is not denser than the Burris Oracle X, right, when we talk about that smaller, faster, lighter, denser, and cheaper. So you can get it for $499 on Lancaster Archery Supply. So if you were interested in that scope, you certainly have other shipping options as well. The last one that I want to talk about, this is MaxView Optics, okay, on this Killer Instinct crossbow. I believe this is like a partnership between MaxView Optics and Killer Instinct, and this is a scope that they've been working on for a couple of years for Killer Instinct crossbows. It's sort of a related company of some sorts. I don't know the details of that, but that's pretty cool. So this is a Killer Instinct sort of product.
Welcome to MaxView Optics. At MaxView Optics, passion meets precision. We combine innovative technology with practical, high-performing optics for hunters and outdoor enthusiasts demanding the best. We believe in reliable products that work without compromise. Trust us the next time you go outdoors and never guess again.
Ooh, I like that. Never guess again. This is why I like the range-finding scopes, and this is why I've been so dedicated to range-finding scopes. You can hunt deer or other animals or whatever, right, with all kinds of different weapons. I get that. But some weapons are better than others. And modern crossbows are better than older crossbows. I know that from experience, right? And over time, everybody sort of learns that with experience. They do things that the older gear, outdated gear, does not do. You can kill deer with a speed ring scope for sure, right? I killed dozens and dozens and dozens of them with speed ring scopes. You've watched me do that. But that doesn't mean that's what I want to do if I have a range-finding scope option. It is better for me to do it with that. It's easier, but it is also not just easier, it is more effective. And it's because I don't have to guess about yardage. This is a game of inches. And off by a couple of inches, because you thought it was 20 and it's really 26 or 24, that couple of inches can make a big difference between that deer flopping around in front of you with a spine shot, shoulder blade hit, whatever, or that deer running off and comfortably dying just out of view. This range-finding scope, this is what I'm talking about. Never guess again. I don't want to be guessing with my aiming. I like to stay 35 yards and in with my 360 feet per second and above crossbows, and that gives me the peace of mind that I'm not worrying about deer ducking the string. The chances of that stuff are so slim at that yardage and at that speed that I don't have to worry about that. I'm not guessing. I don't have to guess that the deer is going to duck and therefore aim low and play games with my aiming. I don't like doing that. Did a video last fall about how to aim on a deer, right? Did an updated version of that, so check that out. I talk about that more in length in my book, The Death by Bunjie Crossbow Method, and I talk about that in more length in that video. So check those out. I also do not want to guess between 25 and 30 and all that stuff and sort of splitting the difference between 20 and 30 because I think the deer's at 25 or whatever. The purpose of these scopes is to eliminate that guesswork. It makes you a more successful crossbow hunter, and it is hard to argue with a tool that makes you more successful. Like, why would you want to be less successful? Like, it's hard to hold that argument up. Because I was pretty excited about this. Never guess again. I love it. CERTIS LRF scope, the CERTIS laser rangefinding scope. So that's what we find out now what that stands for. Laser rangefinding. Perfect. The CERTIS laser rangefinding scope by MaxView Optics is the ultimate choice for precise aiming and exceptional clarity, combining advanced laser rangefinding and state-of-the-art drop compensation. CERTIS performs flawlessly regardless of conditions. Aiming point and arrow drop calculated out to 100 yards. The Burris is unlimited, really. You're only limited by the amount of drop that you have with your arrow. So you might be able to go 150 or something. With a real fast crossbow, you could probably stretch out even further. Micro LED aiming point with multiple brightness settings. So this one gives us a micro LED, a little tiny dot that is an aiming point. That's a difference between that and the X Factor scope, because this one just gives us the same reticles, but gives us a number on the screen as to which reticle to use. So we still got to guess what 28.4 is. We're back here on this. We have to guess what 28.4 is, and I'm guessing it's between 20 and 30. So it's probably going to be right in here somewhere, but you have to guess. Maybe just guess and use the 30. You know how that works. This one, though, if we go back on here, this one gives us a dot similar to the Burris, where we have a precise dot to aim with. Fixed reticle available regardless of conditions, like the Burris. It's got the etched reticles built in there as well. And then the rangefinder measures out to 999 yards. So you can tell how far that next ridge is using the rangefinder. You can take this scope with you on the golf course and figure out which iron you're going to use or what have you. But we have some more information here. Precision meets performance. Why CERTIS? Our proprietary drop compensation engine utilizes thousands of calculations based on an arrow's ballistic coefficient. Listen to how they set this up. This is an advantage over the Burris Oracle X. Simply obtain your actual arrow velocity using a chronograph, zero your crossbow at 20 yards, and you are set. Fine-tune at longer distances. Simple, easy, and accurate. What I take this to mean is that this scope, you are going to get your arrow speed, which can be off the box if you're using the manufacturer's stated specs, right? The arrow weight and all that sort of thing. Or you shoot it through a chronograph. Or you go on deathbybunjie.com and try out one of the calculators to estimate the arrow drop. It's not going to be precise, but it'll get us in the ballpark so that we can sight this in the backyard and go from there. But once you've zeroed your crossbow 20 yards, right? You got to lock that 20-yard reticle in. Perfect. Get that sighted in perfectly. And then you're going to enter your arrow speed, and it will automatically set up what it believes to be the various yardages for you into the ballpark a little bit faster with this scope. Target yardage, 45 yards right here. This is very similar to the Burris Oracle X. This reticle is very similar, almost identical. We have the up and down here. We got this going across, but we have a dot here where we're going to aim, calculates where to aim. We're going to aim on that dot. We've got a fixed reticle, right, that is etched in here, but this is not 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. It might be, but it probably isn't, because depending on the speed of your arrow, that will change. So this is going to be 20 for sure, but then we're going to see this might be 32, 46. This might be 26, and this might be 34, depending on that. But you get an idea for it. Now, if your battery goes dead and you don't have this dot, I wouldn't be shooting past the 20 or maybe 30 anyways. Target yardage, the arrow drop is 9.9 inches at 45 yards. That's interesting to know. I don't know that I need that in a scope, but it doesn't seem to clutter up the reticle an awful lot. It's up here out of the way. And on these scopes, up here, we never use this. All this area can be filled with stuff if you want. I don't care. Machined aluminum body with integrated rangefinder, shorter and lighter than the competition. It's not telling us the weight, but 1.9 pounds or something like that for the Burris Oracle X. Right, with the little remote, maybe it's a full 2 pounds, I don't know. But we take that off of there. I can tell you the SWAT X1's a lot lighter without that scope on there. It is. Bunjie is a lot lighter without a Burris Oracle X on it. It is. That 2 pounds, you're holding it out there, it does make a difference. Over time, these things get smaller, faster, lighter, denser, and cheaper. So they get smaller and they get lighter. And that's what we're seeing here. When they say shorter and lighter than the competition, I'm pretty sure they're talking about the Burris. Because this, when we look at it, is not shorter than the Garmin. The Garmin is a chunky little fella. And so this is not shorter than the Garmin. But it does look shorter than the Burris. So that's probably what they're referring to. Lighter, we'd have to see the weight on this thing. They don't tell us. OLED, ultra bright display, ranging targets using a Bluetooth wireless remote. That is a mandatory thing in this day and age. The Garmin has a wired one that you can run up a wire. We got these cables, we got strings, we got cams, we got all this stuff moving in front of us, and now we have a wire going up there that can loop up and get caught in there. That just is kind of begging for issues. I do like the wireless. This is 2025. We should have wireless, right? It should be Bluetooth. Click, 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 boom, click, boom. Real easy. It always works. It's always there, right? Not a problem. Great battery life and automatic shutoff. I'm sure that there are people out there who are upset with the battery life of the Burris Oracle X, as we know. I take the batteries out in between, so it doesn't really matter. I got a little handy tool to take the battery in and out, and that really does seem to speed that process up. But it's a pain in the neck. It's a pain in the neck. It would not bother me at all if they had bad battery life, if the battery was easier to put in and out. So what I'd like to see this company, if you want to advertise something, show me how easy it is to put the battery in and out of this, right? Like does it just pop open, you put it in, pop it shut, click it shut maybe? It should be real easy. That is the thing that the Burrises have to work on. That is about all that's out there. Now we can go to Wyvern Creations and pre-order one, and we see it is $699. So if you like this scope, probably going to get my hands on one because I am interested in it as I learn more. If it's got everything I like about the Burris, but in a smaller, lighter package, oh yeah, I'll sign up for one, right? $699. The downside is, this has an independent zoom, a zoom that's independent of the sighting in. Remember on our scopes, if you adjust that speed ring on most of those CROSSBOW scopes, it's going to zoom in and out. Yeah, it makes it easier to see or farther away, whatever, but it also affects your sighting in. You've changed the sighting in, so it's no longer accurate, right? This sights in digitally, and zooming in and out, that has nothing to do with it. I can zoom in, get a better look at that deer. I can zoom out for the closer deer, and that doesn't affect the accuracy. It's perfect. Aww. The downside is, I guarantee you none of these scopes are going to have as good a warranty as the Burris Oracle X. I've never seen anything like it. If it breaks, you send it to them, they send you one, or they fix it, one or the other. And they do it fast. Right? I think they're even paying the shipping. I think they even paid the shipping. Like, it's just phenomenal. I don't know how they can maintain that long term, but whatever. I'll take it. Like I said, I got 4 of those things. Probably going to buy another one to put on the third SWAT X1. Or maybe I put one of these on the SWAT X1. I don't know. I'll play around with that. But I do like to have the same scope on all of my primary hunting crossbows. So that's a thing, too. This is a look at some of the modern scopes. What we see from Excalibur is a look back at a popular scope, and I am sure there are Excalibur users out there who want this scope. I am sure there are other people who use other brands of crossbows and would rather have 60-yard reticles instead of 120-yard reticles, right? If you're a crossbow hunter, 120-yard reticles, I don't know, woodchucks, maybe, I don't know. But there's not a lot of things I want to shoot at 120 yards with a scope. My eyes just don't support that. That's too far away, right? But a 60-yard reticle scope, if you're using a speed ring scope, is not a bad one. And this gives this at least puts one on the market where you can get your hands on a modern 60-yard reticle scope. So that's pretty cool. It is not, for me, because I am committed now to range-finding scopes. And I think the future of crossbow hunting is range-finding scopes. And you know how I know? They're getting cheaper and more plentiful. Because look at this. Now we got multiple options that we just talked about. And I guarantee you there's another one out there that I didn't talk about today. But it's an exciting time to be a crossbow hunter, isn't it? Look at these scopes. Let me know what you think. Until next time, all hail Bunjie.